This is a two birds, one stone build. Let me explain. You see, this month is the Four Horsemen's Wastelands Warlord Invitational. And at the same time that this came up, I received a package from Jody Sims inviting me to take part in his Wastelands Winter Invitational later this year. And he sent me this Matchbox 1985 Porsche 911 rally casting. Now, this event that he's hosting later this year, and it is later this year, it's not right away, the races are going to start in late October. So I had some time to get this done. It's not like I needed to rush it. But I wanted to do this for the Four Horsemen build too. So the restrictions on the build, restrictions is the wrong term probably, but it's going to be a rally race. So this being the rally casting. And here you see what he sent. There you see the casting. And I'm going to read some of these things to you that came with it. My teammate, it's made up of teams. I'm on Team Honcho. And my teammate in this is Eddie Papandrea, the Godfather. The Godfather does wild stuff. So I needed to go wild, which is the reason I'm drilling this tuned VW casting. I want this engine. Now, there's no way I'm going to build anything as wild as Eddie can do because he does amazing stuff. But I'm on his team, so I had to be a little wild, right? So I'm thinking this is going to be wild enough. Our team colors, the color scheme is red and white. And you can use other colors, but those two colors should be prominent. And that's basically it. I need to build this and then get it off to Jody, by the time the races come in late October. So I'm not going totally crazy other than that engine, which I'm sure Porsche enthusiasts are cringing at. But I marked the casting. You see it had the back post, a metal body, plastic base, plastic insert in the middle. I thought about cleaning off the stuff on the roof, and then it's like, this is a rally race. You're going to want that stuff with you. At least I'm going to. So, and I thought it'd be more of a pain to clean those off. I thought, well, these are already created for me, so I'm going to keep them. So I drilled some holes in the casting around the post, got out the jeweler's saw, definitely got out the beeswax. This has been the best thing I probably ever learned about using the jeweler's saw, is using the beeswax on it. Stuff lasts forever. And I do this entire cut without breaking the blade at all. And I'm sure some of you are going to look at the way I cut using this. I don't use one of those wood tongues that can stick out from the bench because unfortunately my bench is kind of funky, and so I can't really clamp down to it. So I end up holding this thing. That's the way I do a lot of these. It doesn't need to be a super precise cut because I'm going to file it down to size anyway. I just wanted to get that post out of there and get the chunk off the back of the car. There you see it finally come off. Again, didn't break any blades doing this. I know some people break a lot of blades. Get the beeswax. And then I filed this thing. And I did file it quite a bit because I wanted it to be a tight fit. I didn't want it to be exceptionally loose in that back area. I did want to keep the casting. You see under the back window, I kept that part of the casting for the window frame because that seemed more appropriate to me. It seemed more realistic to me. And also the way the engine, particularly the exhaust, goes on the back bumper back there was very similar to the way it was on that tuned VW. And I can tell you, I'm going to be getting more of these tuned VWs because that engine, I love the engine. And I suppose I can use the VW castings for other things. But that engine, I want to throw on some other stuff as well. Got out the JB weld. I had tacked the engine in place using CA glue, very little CA glue, 2 spots. Once it was in place, then I used the JB weld on the surface, the top around the engine, did that as smoothly as I could. So I'm taking my time. The JB Weld I had mixed up pretty thin at that point. And you'll see it a little bit better here in a second. But I smoothed it into that rear spoiler or duck fin or whatever you want to call it that they had on the back of the Porsche. And I was happy with how that turned out. Here's where the build went astray. Frustrated the heck out of me, to be honest with you. And I recover from it. But it's one of those things that I try and learn from all the builds I do, and this is something I learned from this build. I popped those wheels off because I want to jack this thing up. And there you see me, I tacked on some Real Riders, some big Real Riders onto there from, I can't remember which set it was. Put this on the body and tried to convince myself that I liked the way it looked, or, well, once I got finished painting it, it'll look better. And so I went with this. And I don't know if others of you have done this as well on builds, but you look at it. Let me divert to this for a second. I'm taking a pin vise and drilling a hole. I'm drilling out one of the headlights because I want a gun of some kind on this. And I thought, well, one headlight I can sacrifice for the gun. And I use a brass tube for the gun, as you'll see coming up. But those wheels, back to the wheels, I thought, I convinced myself it would look better later as I got farther along in the build. And what I've learned from this is don't stray from your gut feeling on things. If you really don't like the look of something, don't try and convince yourself, it's going to be better later. It won't. It probably won't. And I end up being very happy with what I end up doing on this. But yeah, it was one of those things that it actually made me not want to work on it. That it was a look that I'd look at it and it just looked goofy to me. And that was bugging me, and yet I was stubborn and didn't want to change the wheels because I didn't have anything that I was going to like changing the wheels to. At least I thought I did in different wheels. So here you see me JB welding the underside of the engine, and I JB welded the gun into place. Again, that was tacked with a very slight amount of CA glue and then going over it with the JB weld really reinforces it. As I mentioned before, Eddie and I are assigned to Team Honcho. We are Team Honcho. So I thought I want some recognition of Honcho on this. So I take the red pencil here, and I'm just putting an H on the hood that ends up being pretty subtle after I do all the painting and everything else. But again, I just kind of want to say that the frustration I had with the overall look, I liked how this was going. I loved how the engine looked, but this was the best change I made, was going back to the original wheels. I ended up I sanded off that copper ring on the wheels. And off camera, I weather the heck out of this whole thing. One thing I finally figured out, and it shows up pretty well in these pictures and the turntable shot, doesn't on the glamour shots for some reason. But I've always had a problem when using the powders, and then I clear coat over them and they disappear. And so what I did on this is all done with color shot paints, hand painted with Citadel paints, the detail like you see on the top of the car, Nuln Oil around the engine, popping out the detail on that. To me, a fine line marker, or fine line, what's it called? Accent paint? Panel line accent color. I like that the glass didn't need to be modified to fit in there. Panel line paint for some of the detail as well. But what I did with the color shots is I put matte clear over everything, and then I applied powders on top of that while it was still a little sticky, which I'm sure some of you are just like, what? Yeah, you heard me right. I kept fighting it here, thinking it wasn't fitting well together. And then I looked back at the original pictures of the Matchbox car, and there's those gaps around the fender wells and stuff. It was fitting together properly. It's just the way the casting's made with that center section being the bumper and some of the fender wells, the flares and stuff around the body. Was able to screw through the back section into the engine post, which I really need to torque the heck out of that thing down. So I was using a weird screw. It was tough to draw into, and I didn't have a long enough 1/72 screw, and the 256 was too big for that engine post. But anyhow, enough babbling about that. But yeah, while the paint was still tacky, I put powder on it. I'd wipe the powder on it, and did that a few times, and I'm happy with the results. It turned out better than expected. So that's basically the build. And you'll see the turntable shots coming up and everything. But I'd like to thank the Four Horsemen for hosting the Wastelands Warlord build this month. And I hope this is enough of a Warlord. The Warlord's driving a Porsche. Come on. I mean, why wouldn't he? So there you see where we started. And be sure to check out all of the builds in this invitational. They'll put a recap video on their Four Horsemen page as well. So be sure and watch for that and check out all of the other builds. At the same time, I'd also like to thank Jody Sims for sending me this casting and inviting me to participate in his event, the rally races that are going to start in late October. And in spite of the frustration with this casting, I'm thrilled with how it turned out. And I think it's wild enough. It's weird enough that I think weird and wild enough that Eddie and I will make a good team. So be sure and root for Team Honcho in that event later this year. So I hope you like this build. And everybody, thanks for watching these videos. Here's the glamour shots. And stay safe and healthy out there. And I'll catch you in the next one.